Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our town hall. Just a couple of quick reminders for everyone. And, you know, we do our town hall weekly. Every week, we feature a new professional vendor company to do a quick 15-minute presentation. And then after that, our town hall is driven by you, the participants. So this is all for you, by you, requested by you. You guide us to the features. You guide us through what we're going to talk about next. So it's very important that you continue to participate through Q&A. That's going to decide what we talk about after our featured presentation today. As you know, this week we've made things slightly different, where you're able to sign up once and not have to go back and sign up every week. So we're putting you now on our VIP list. So every week you will automatically be signed up. Feel free to spread the word, tell other coworkers, friends, family who could benefit from our weekly town hall. Please feel free to have them join us. This is going to continue to evolve. Over the next several weeks, we have some very exciting announcements that we'll be making about other people joining forces with us. So it's going to be very exciting. So today, we're going to get ready to kick things off. It looks like our participants are at where we expect to be, and I'm going to turn it over to Nick.
Okay, thank you, Dino. Just to kick things off real quick, there's a glut of funny videos we've seen on YouTube about the everything going on now, and so we just want to share one just to kind of get things started. Here we go.
At first I was afraid, I was petrified. I didn't get why Mom was suddenly always inside. My daily naps were now cut short and sneaking on your bed was done. There's no more barking at the mailman. What's a dog supposed to do for fun? But now you're home, and it's pretty fun. We played fetch for 7 hours in the backyard in the sun. I get belly rubs and treats, I never have to hold my pee. I don't know what a pandemic is, but it sure is good for me. So let's go, let's walk out the door. We've already had 4 walks a day, and we'll probably do 3 more. In a time of stress, you can rely on man's best friend. And well, I hope the world recovers. I'll be sad when this all ends. On the bright side, the pets will thrive. Every day that you are here with me is the best day of my life. If you stay, I won't eat all your shoes. I'll even stop the indoor poos. The pets will thrive. The pets will thrive. Hey, hey.
All right, so welcome everyone to our 4th virtual town hall hosted by Planned Companies. The meeting will be recorded and made available on our website to all of today's attendees. Presenting today will be Ray Venturino, Director of Business Development for CityFire Equipment. For over 50 years, CityFire has been the leader in sales, installation, service, and for all fire safety equipment, as well as inspection services and education. After Ray's brief overview, we'll have our question and answer session with our panel. Look at the bottom of your screen to see the Q&A button on your Zoom controls. From there, you can type your question. Along with Ray today, our panel for Q&A includes Jeff Shipman, who's the CEO and President of Heartline, Rob Francis, Dino Oliano, Peter Theodoropoulos, and JJ Chavez of Planned Companies, and Martin Cabellar, who's an attorney with Becker and Poliakoff. Okay, real quick, we did a little town hall poll last time, and we wanted to continue that. So we are seeing that many men have skipped shaving while sheltering in place. And our question is, which beard will you or your significant other be wearing by the time we're back to normal? Will it be the Johnny Depp, the Ray Donovan, the James Harden, or that dude from the Oak Ridge Boys? Here is our poll, and if you'd like to take a shot at it, we will have results at the a little bit later. So now I'd like to turn this over to Ray. Ray?
Hey, how you guys doing? Just want to thank Planned for having me, and honored to be a part of this panel moving forward, and here to answer all your questions whenever you need anything, so just let me know. Today, we are going to talk about doing your fire inspections and the balancing act of should you do your inspections, should you let companies into their building. So we want to go over what the managers are thinking and how we can ease that stress of making that decision. So if you look at the slide on the left would be the reasons to keep people out, to try to be safe. And on the right would be reasons why you'd want to do your inspections. And we'll go over all those and see what we have there. So first, obviously, starting from the left, the reasons to try to be safe. You don't want to spread the virus, obviously. Property managers and owners of buildings are responsible for the protection of all persons associated with the building, the employees, the residents, visitors, etc. You also want to limit the outside exposure, which would be vendors coming in or anybody coming in to do work that you don't deem necessary. Now, a big one is the responsibility and protection of the most vulnerable. So some managers might have a senior living home or lifestyle condo residence. You want to be careful to make sure that those people are safe and that they're taken care of and they're not exposed. And we understand that. And that's why everything, like I said, is a balancing act or a conversation to have those things going over. Government ordered shutdown of business. And like many of you, I think we struggle with the definition of essential business. So we want to kind of establish what is an essential business and what's not. And then on the fire and life safety protection side, if you look at this, it's really like a balancing act, like the scale. So on the we're trying to make this scale, go to your advantage, whichever you really need. The reasons for doing your inspections obviously would be unknown impairments of your fire system. Surprise, fire system doesn't work. You have a fire, you have a problem, you have water, anything that happens that our systems cover, your alarms don't work. You really don't want to know that those don't work when the emergency is there. You want to know beforehand. Occupancy status actually increases the risks. Now what's happening, it goes both ways. All your residential properties are now full of people 24/7. Usually people that haven't been there usually during the day are now there during the day. So you have more chances of having any kind of accident or any kind of incident happen. Kids are home playing football in the house, knocking into sprinkler heads and things like that. Now the opposite, commercial buildings and other buildings that are not occupied, you used to have plenty of people there that in case something happened, you could, there's always going to be someone there that says, hey, we have a problem, we have a fire, we have this. So now there's less people in the building. So now you need those systems to be working properly because now you have less people that are, on fire watch, let's say. Basically, you had all those people on fire watch. Now this is the same as on the other side, the responsibility for protection of our most vulnerable. Now, if you turn it around, the people that can't get out of the apartments or the most vulnerable people now need to make sure their sprinklers work, their alarms work more than ever. So that's kind of turns it around on the other side. So we kind of have both reasons on each side. Other examples would be lack of water, maintaining egress, things like that you really want to know about. Fire doors being left open because people are doing things differently now that they're home. They might, put stuff in front of doors or do things they're not supposed to do. So you really want to have your inspection so you can check all that out. Also, you don't want any false alarms. Can you imagine, we're all trying to keep social distancing. Can you imagine if there's a false alarm on your alarm company, your alarm system, everybody walks outside and everybody's all hanging out together now. We're all touching each other, next to each other. So you want to avoid things like that. Basically, your fire protection is essential to the public and to everyone else. So we call it essential business. Next slide. Limiting the risk, what the experts say. So the NFPA, which a lot of people always ask me, what does NFPA say? What are the guidelines? Sent out this memo a couple weeks ago, and it says basically all commercial and multi-occupancy residence buildings should maintain fully operational life fire safety systems as required by the applicable codes and standards. So basically, the bottom line is we should be doing the inspections, we should be doing them on time, and as far as NFPA says, the inspections should be done. Next slide. Limiting the risk. Also now we talked to the Division of Fire Safety, and some of their recommendations were Communicating, making sure that you call your fire protection company and say, I have a building. I'm not sure if you guys should be in there. These are the factors. This is what we're up against. Communicate, talk to your fire inspectors, talk to your fire company, use common sense. If you don't want us coming in there and looking at every single apartment, because that's part of the inspection, maybe we can limit that. Be flexible. Both parties need to be flexible. You could definitely call our company or call me and say, Ray, I need a modification in what we're doing to the inspection because it's just not working for us. The most important thing is this is all a case-by-case basis, and no matter who you ask, they're going to say the most important thing. Every building is different, but all buildings are not created equal. So let's use common sense and make sure that, hey, an unoccupied building has different needs than a full residential building with, 500 people all stuck in one place, all stuck at home. So everything is a case-by-case basis. So if you have any questions, please call your fire equipment company and start evaluating and looking at all those different things that you could do to make the inspection safer. Another thing that Division of Fire Safety has mentioned a lot is you can modify the inspections to make sure that the most important parts of the inspection are being done. Now, the most important part of the inspections, there's a lot of different things that are important. Obviously, we'd like to do everything that, or the whole entire protocol of the inspection, but if we can't, there's different things that we can do. The next slide, please. So prioritize critical components. Critical component would be things that should be checked at minimum. If we're going to come into the building and check, we'd love to make sure that the water is flowing properly, that the gauges have pressure. If you have a fire pump in your building, we have to make sure that fire pump works. We want to make sure that the pump will churn, that the controller turns on, that the electric is there. The same with alarm panels. The panel has power and backup power. Make sure that it's communicating with central station monitoring, very important. Making sure that all the horn and strobes work. So we can modify the inspections to make sure that all this is done. If any of your buildings have a restaurant, if you have mixed use or you have a restaurant and they're still operating, suppression systems critical. The hoods have to be cleaned. Inspections need to be done to make sure that those hood systems are clean and done. Once again, the Department of Fire Safety, repairs, they mentioned to me specifically repairs. If there is something that is impairing that system from working and it's stopping from working, it needs to be taken care of right away. So that should, ease your thoughts on that. You should say, hey, should we do it or should we not do it? Your fire inspector says that all repairs really should be done if they're going to stop the system from working properly. So that's very important. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so what the fire protection company is saying, what we're saying to our customers, basically. Give us a call. It's a partnership. Keep the communication open. If you have any questions or any issues, call. If you have a specific need at your building, call. Let's come up with a plan. Let's get an action plan together. And I don't like to use this term all the time, but think outside the box. There's no better time than right now to think outside the box when it comes to fire protection and doing inspections. If you need us to come in there with a cell phone and a FaceTime and a tablet and maybe have your maintenance guy come do, walk and turn the valves and do things like that, and we can look at it through FaceTime, whatever works for you guys, whatever you think is a good idea. Leaving doors open. There's a lot of back doors that firemen use to get into the sprinkler rooms and the alarm rooms. I'm sure you guys, if you had any kind of false alarms or anything, that firemen come right in as close as they can to the panels in the sprinkler rooms. Let us use that door. Have a conversation beforehand and say, hey, please meet me at this time. I'm going to have the maintenance guy open the door and you guys can have free reign of whatever you need. You don't have to go into the building as much as we do a visual inspection of all sprinkler heads. And we have to go into residence sometimes for apartment buildings. Maybe we cut that out and, work with you on that so we don't have to go into people's buildings themselves. Obviously, safety and OSHA guidelines, CDC guidelines, our guys will have masks, our guys will have gloves. We're going to practice social distancing. We're going to use common sense. It shouldn't be an issue. We're going to make sure that we're safe and you're safe and keep everybody safe. One of the negatives that will happen if we don't come in and do your inspections, I think, is going to be a backlog, which also the division has talked about. If something has to be done in February or March and it's being pushed off and pushed off, when things get back to normal, and they will, we're going to have an overload of inspections that need to be done. If we all get back to normal in June, and we have to do June's inspections, we can't be doing February's, March, and April's inspections in June as well. So that's part of the issue that a lot of people have been saying to us, is that we want to postpone it, and we're trying to tell people, if you can't, please don't postpone it, because it really will become a problem in the future. It could delay service and repairs and everything. It also could affect us in the winter, like we can't run water in the winter. So if we're all backlogged all the way to October, November, and it gets cold, we can't run hydrants, we can't run fire pumps. It just could make a little bit of an issue moving forward. So we want to make sure that that everybody tries to get everything scheduled in a prompt manner. Limiting your liability, what I'm telling people is what you want to do is you want to call your insurance companies, you want to call your fire company. You can go to the next slide. The last slide we have here, just these are resources and sources that you can ask questions to. You can call your Division of Fire Safety, call your fire inspector, your insurance company. Don't leave them out. I'm sure they have an opinion on what they want you to do. Talk to them. Just so you cover all your bases. We don't want you to be liable for anything that someone said, oh, I should have done that or shouldn't have done that. We want there to be, like I said, a balance. Balance the risk of the pandemic versus the risk of not having your fire equipment working properly. That's really what we're trying to do here, and I hope that any questions that you have would help you guys do that and make that right decision. Like I said, it really is a case-by-case basis, and everybody in my company and I'm willing to literally look at your building as a one-off and go from there. So please feel free to call. Feel free to have any questions that you have, but these are the people that you should be talking to help you make that decision. So I think that's pretty much it. Hopefully the questions are here. If anyone else has any.
Great job, Ray, by the way. Great job.
Sure.
A number of questions have come in for you, but
Nick,
real quick, I noticed there were a number of janitorial questions that came in, so just answer a couple if that's okay, and let Nick
Sure.
kind of do his thing. It was asked about bleach. Should we use bleach? The answer is yes. The CDC, the WHO recommend using a bleach solution as one way to disinfect areas contaminated by the virus, but must be properly diluted so it does not damage any of the surfaces and finishes. So you can use it, but make sure you're diluting it the right way. Question about building areas and cleaning if they're closed off. So I'll just grab that one, Dino, and group, if that's okay, real quick.
sure.
Or should we could do it but if areas are completely closed off, meaning like no one has entered the space for quite some time, then you might not need to disinfect and clean them at the moment. But when you open them up, when they reopen, a thorough disinfecting and cleaning is absolutely warranted. It shouldn't be one and done for disinfecting. You should do it throughout on periodicals on a routine. So I saw that as well. Should it be one time or multiple? You should always be cleaning and disinfecting and following the guidelines. So just wanted to grab a few of those real quick.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob. And Nick, I know you have some questions out there from some audience members and some that were collected through earlier this week. Can we get to some of those, please?
Sure. I've got a question for Ray, and pre-show question. Can we wait for social distancing order to be lifted before doing our inspections?
Well, as I mentioned, it's really up to you. You guys have the final call in all this. Our job is to make you more comfortable with that decision if we do come in and do it. The backlog issue is what I'd be more worried about, and also the safety issue. So you can wait. It's up to you. You could ask your AHJ if that's okay, which is what I would do. I would definitely make sure that it's okay with him, because they will be getting back to work and they will be finding and doing things come back, when they get back, when everything comes back to normal. So if you can do them, I would recommend doing them. If you have to put them off for whatever reason, you have, compromised people in your building. I know a manager of mine had MS people in her building. And she says, I can't have you in here. I'm like, I understand, but please make sure that you balance it out with if there's a fire and safety issues. So you can wait. It's just not recommended, I guess. You know, this NFPA says do your inspections. So we're going with.
And Ray, if I could just add to that for a second, any of the buildings who are considering not doing inspections potentially should definitely consult with their legal counsel about that first. I've recommended to all of my clients to go forward with those inspections because that is, as Ray said, a life safety issue in and of itself, is absolutely permitted under, in New Jersey anyway, Governor Murphy's orders currently. So you should work with your counsel, work with Ray, and figure out maybe an alternative approach to get to it or something that can be done. There might be extreme circumstances, like Ray said, where you can't do it and it's just not realistic, but make sure you're consulting legal counsel, particularly if you have a board giving you pushback on the issue. You want to protect, obviously, the association, whether you're the management company, whether you're planned companies, whether you're CityFire, you want to protect your clients. So make sure you tell them, consult with legal counsel too.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I should have put that in the presentation. You know, actually talk to your lawyer. Sorry about that, Martin.
That's okay. Nobody wants us until they need us, right?
Yeah, but it's the same thing as far as liability. You know, talk to your insurance company, talk to your fire inspector, and talk to your attorney. Makes perfect sense. Yep.
Thanks, guys. And Nick, before we go on to the next question, I know Martin wanted to talk about some other things that came up this week from a legal standpoint, but just to remind our participants that your questions can be asked of any of the panelists. So clearly we have legal, we have our tech team, we have our fitness team, all the previous folks who have done presentations in the past. So when you're hitting that Q&A button at the bottom and putting in your questions, feel free to ask questions of anyone on the panel. So I'm going to turn over to Martin real quick here. Martin?
Yeah, I just want to give two important updates. One thing that a lot of people missed in Governor Murphy's, and this one's particular to New Jersey, I know we have a lot of New Jersey folks on the line, in Governor Murphy's construction order is there's a paragraph in there, paragraph 5, that actually talks about increased cleaning requirements for residential buildings that have more than 50 units, or at least 50 units, so 50 units or more. And that requires them to adopt policies to implement additional cleaning protocols in areas where certain operations are conducted, right? You have to clean and disinfect all high touch areas. So you're talking about the lobbies, the elevators, obviously, all of these things. So that's Executive Order 122. I'll put it into the chat, the paragraphs, so you can read the full paragraph. But if you're out there and you're managing or working with a building that has 50 or more units, you got to get these protocols in place pursuant to the governor's order. The other quick thing that happened was Governor Murphy adopted an executive order that essentially says you don't have to pay, and again, this is New Jersey, your insurance premiums for a period of time, in that your insurance companies can't cancel your insurance. For all of our clients that we represent, we're essentially telling them, pay your insurance premiums. It doesn't make any sense because it's not as though you're not going to have to pay them eventually. It's going to change your budget. And what's going to wind up happening is if you don't actually have a problem with money right now, and most associations don't yet with collections and issues like that, that order is not really meant for you, right? That order is meant for the people who are actually being affected and don't have the ability to pay for their personal insurance policies. I know a couple of our clients had come to us and said, should we pay? Well, absolutely. Why wait to pay and then potentially owe a debt to your insurance company? Continue to do business as normal has been our recommendation, because otherwise you're just putting more debt into future budgets. So that's all I have to say, Dino. If you guys want to open up the Q&A now. Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks, Martin.
All right, thanks, Martin. So we do have a number of resources available on our COVID-19 page. It's plancompanies.com/COVID-19. And this webinar, the recording of this webinar, plus our others, are on that page. We also have a pretty hefty FAQ section with questions from previous webinars. Some of the information that Martin just mentioned now, we'll make that available on that page as well. So, okay, question for Ray. My fire alarm keeps going into trouble. My alarm company says it's the phone lines. What happens when the phone company is refusing to come out right now to repair the lines? What can I do?
Well, I know that phone companies and cable companies are not coming out because I had a problem and they would not come out. They just resent the signal box or whatever. So they're not coming. We're obviously, most of the panels that we monitor are wireless. So it's a self-contained unit that would be, would go through us, and there's no phone lines. You get rid of Verizon, you get rid of all the other components of that. So I don't know what to do if you have phone lines and they're not going to fix them. You could obviously call us and we can try to troubleshoot and see if that's the issue. But my recommendation, it's been for the last 8-9 years, is to really get rid of the phone lines and have the self-contained wireless systems that are available now. So you call your companies and see if that's available, and they can actually probably take that over right away, and it could be done as an emergency, so that if you lost communication to your panel, a wireless communication can be set up almost immediately. So that would help. That'd be my answer.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you, Ray. All right, we've got a question for Martin here. Is there ever an occasion when a fire suppression system shared in the garage of 2 units would be a homeowner responsibility?
Okay, so the general principle you would probably start off with in that instance is you're thinking it's not homeowner responsibility. The problem is you got to go to the documents specific to the community that you live in, right? So you're looking at your master deed, your declaration, if you're talking about a condominium association, which based on this question sounds like that's what this community probably is. And C, is there, how do they define unit? How do they define common elements? And are there any specific references? With something like that, absolutely, consult your legal counsel to make sure you're interpreting the documents correctly, because there is a general principle that, everyone in the industry kind of lives by. Exterior, in a condo situation, exterior association responsible, sheetrock in, unit owner responsibility. But that's just a general premise you kind of start from. Your documents could say otherwise, and your community might define common elements differently, or might define items in a unit differently. Just because an item is located outside of a unit, the physical 4 walls of the unit, doesn't mean it's not a unit owner's responsibility. You got to look at the governing documents.
Okay, Martin, thank you. We've got a question for Jeff of Heartline. Recommendations on signage or placement of wipes and signs to achieve greater compliance?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a variety of signs that have been of topic and consideration lately. Specifically, the wipes, but there's also social distancing, where to stand, things like that you're seeing in the grocery store. So specific to wipes, 2 things really to consider is getting in right in front of their face, so they understand before and after they're hopping on equipment, and making the wipes convenient. If you've got to go halfway across the room to grab some wipes, obviously not going to be front and center for that person possibly, but signage, definitely get more signage up, put it in front of people, and the more convenient you can have access to wipes and cleaning type products, the better.
Okay, Jeff, thank you. So a couple of weeks ago, Peter Theodopoulos, our CTO, ran one of these sessions talking about communication solutions during the shutdown. And got a question for Peter. Will a Mac run Microsoft Teams or Zoom? Does it have the same capabilities as Windows?
Yes. So talking about Microsoft Teams, which is the collaborative module that's built into Office 365, it runs not only on Windows, and the different varies from Windows 7 and above. It works on Mac OS. On top of that, it does run on the mobile devices, iOS, so whether you have an iPhone or an iPad, and all of the Androids. So it's very convenient to be able to run in almost anything. Nice thing about it is whether you're on your desktop, again, Windows or Mac OS, or your phone, you can walk away from your desktop, and anybody attempting to chat with you, because it knows that you're idling on your desktop, it'll start to ring you or ding you on your mobile device. It's very powerful in that sense. In Zoom, same thing. Windows and Mac OS, which are the dominant desktop OSs that are out there.
Hey, Peter, real quick, 2 questions. Has Zoom kind of figured out any of the security issues, or is that ongoing? And is that background your basement or some area that you have at your house, or is that specific to you? Or
that's our data center. I'm deep below the yeah, so it's a nice background that we're using in Zoom. So Zoom, yes, so Zoom is being very proactive in taking care of their security issues. I don't know if I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the Zoom bombing, where because of their lack of security, they can enter into a Zoom meeting, not a Zoom webinar, but a Zoom meeting, and be able to throw content up on the screen, inappropriate content that could actually start talking to us, and so on and so forth. So they've provided 4 different ways of preventing that from happening. Just so in a Zoom meeting, it's recommended to activate the waiting room. So in other words, as participants are coming into the waiting room, we can accept them if we recognize their names or their phone numbers. The other thing is with Zoom, because there's 2 ways of setting up a meeting, you use your personal ID, which is an ID never changes. So you could just say, hey, here's my Zoom doc US/personal ID, and then there's your room. They recommend not to use that and use the ones on a per meeting basis, because those numbers change, the meeting IDs, and that's the way to go on that. And then there's one extra option to make sure that that who's hosting presentation material, and just check off host only to be able to do that. So it prevents it. So using Zoom is very robust. It is an exceptional product, and it is ahead of the game, even with Microsoft Teams when it's doing meetings, because you can have more video and more, we'll say, especially with the backgrounds and stuff. But taking those precautions, you can get through the day without being Zoom bombed, in a sense.
Okay, Peter, thank you very much. So real quick, are the scientific results of our poll, which beard will you or your significant other be sporting by the time we're back to normal? It looks like the Ray Donovan, kind of a 5 o'clock shadow with 40% is the winner there. So, okay, very good. Thank you, everybody who participated in that.
That's what Martin had last week, right? That's the winner.
It was getting long. I had to shave it. It was getting too itchy. I figured we would have been back to work by now. I was really hoping, and then I could go back with it. But I'll start it up again.
There you go.
Okay, we've got a security question for Dino. Extra security around a property may panic some residents. What should a property manager be communicating to his or her building about extra security?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're going to go with extra security personnel, I think it's important that they're not intimidating. I had a question a couple of weeks ago if armed security was necessary during this pandemic, and absolutely not. Your security team should be a soft presence, helpful in the building. If you are adding security these days, it's to probably secure the amenity spaces that are locked down now that were open before. Perhaps it's to help with packages or delivering packages, or to make sure that you're securing the supplies that are critical to your building now. Having extra personnel, be it security folks, should be there to be helpful to the property. And whether they are front desk, janitors, security, or maintenance team, everyone should be participating in securing the property and making sure that we control what's coming in and out. That's whether it's packages, whether it's people, or supplies. You want to have a controlled environment. The best way to do that is by having nice, soft, approachable, friendly security personnel at your property to be able to help. These are helpers. So absolutely, you should not be intimidated by having extra staff. They should be looked upon as being helpful to the building.
Okay, Dino, thank you. We've got a question for Ray. I manage a condo community where everything goes through the board. How do I relay to them that fire inspections need to be done?
Well, as I mentioned in the presentation, there is the importance of it as far as legally it should be done. Martin, I guess you could come in with that as well, that you need to tell them the facts, that it's expected to be done by NFPA. It does keep your building safe, and you'd rather be caught with your inspections done than not done if something happens. When there is a problem, everything's fine until there's a fire or a flood. That's what I always tell people. And you really want to make sure that you had those inspections. You can kind of relay that to them, give them the education that we're giving today to them, and just relay that to them when we were talking about how important it is and problems that can happen if you don't do them legally and from a safety point.
Yeah, I think this is a risk, I mean, a situation where you have to evaluate the risk, right? And so, yes, we are dealing with the situation of COVID-19. And so we are doing our best to limit contact. And when we have to undertake things that are emergent in nature, sometimes these fire inspections certainly would be if you are due for one. Yeah, if you're not up for 2 months, yes, wait those 2 months until you're actually due. Don't do it earlier than you need to, but when it's time to do it, do it. And the way I would communicate to that is involve the company, involve Ray, involve the legal counsel, and have them do the communicating for you to the board so that the board fully understands their risk. And, you know, Ray and myself, if we were involved in that, we would be putting that in writing to them. This way they understand it and everyone is covered, and then the manager's covered because the manager reached out to us, we provided that advice, the manager gave them that advice, and if they decide not to do it, that's on them.
Makes sense.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. We've got a question for Jeff Shipman. Should we consider cross-contamination through HVAC systems?
Yeah, great question. And this has come up several times in some of the conversations that I've been having. And, you know, really when you think about people exercising, you have a lot more air being expired. And obviously that's one of the ways we can transmit this virus. So the contamination that can occur with somebody asymptomatic obviously lasts up to 3 hours, and there's some other numbers on that in the air. Does your HVAC system have some sort of ultraviolet light or static, electrostatic kind of disinfectant system in it? Because those systems obviously feed multiple rooms and circulate air. So you could potentially, through an environment in the fitness center where you're expiring more air, possibly contaminating that room and other rooms, it is something to kind of, you know, investigate and understand.
Okay, great, Jeff. Thank you very much. We've got a question for Martin. Legally, does construction on a property have to stop because of COVID-19, or can it continue? Is it deemed essential?
So this is going to be one of those state-to-state issues, depending on what your governor has put into place. In New Jersey, for example, the governor put a halt on all non-essential construction and then defines what is essential versus what is not essential. Generally speaking, you're talking about things that are of emergent nature. So like a fire inspection, for example, that would be something that needs to be done because it's of an emergent nature. Active water leaks, repair of a pipe, those are things of an emergent nature. There are some exceptions, limited exceptions though, so you have to read the order, for projects that are already underway, though for the most part, many of those exceptions are going to fall into how to physically secure the site rather than continuing the work. But there are a few instances where you can continue the work. And our interpretation of the governor's order in New Jersey anyway, is you could still do roadway projects. So if you have a paving project or something like that, though you're going to have your contractors obviously adhere to social distancing and things of that nature. I'll put a link below to our website. And if you go to that, you'll see there's a blog with a lot more detail, because I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but a lot more detail on construction in New Jersey and what would be permitted and what would not be permitted.
Okay, Martin, great, thank you. So question for Ray, can you do a virtual web or phone inspection?
The answer is yes. I did talk to, like I said, the Division of Fire Safety, and they said be creative. They said whatever means you need to use. Maybe you can ask a maintenance guy to help you, or he could be the other guy on the other end of the phone call, the virtual FaceTime. I would recommend doing it visually where people can see each other and have those conversations. We can do it virtually. It will be noted on your inspection report that it was done virtually and that certain things were not done. And that's part of the caveats of the inspection, that anything that we can't get to will be noted on the inspection that it was not done at this time. And that usually, like I said, will be fine with the AHJ as long as it's all written out. But we absolutely can think outside the box and do different things. And video is recommended, or will be okay. So yes.
Okay, Ray, thank you very much. Question for Rob Francis. What safety precautions do you use for your staff members cleaning a property?
So very important to train, train on the CDC guidelines, train on the supplies and equipment that you're using in the building, train on how you clean the equipment after use of the building, because you may bring it to other buildings and don't want to cross-contaminate. So you can't train enough. Make sure you have the right equipment, so the right gloves, masks, if it's an emergency situation or a confirmed COVID case, hazmat suits. So you make sure you procure the right supplies, right equipment, train and overtrain, and follow the guidelines, and make sure you understand the guidelines. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Question for Dino on security. Does your team provide a full security assessment of a property?
Yeah, we do. I think it's important that, a lot of boards and a lot of high rises or low rises or even mid rises don't have a security expert on staff. So it's important that you utilize your company, Blend for sure does it, to come in and assess what you're doing for security. Maybe even perhaps something to consider during COVID-19 to take a look around and see perhaps where you could be missing something when it comes to security. As I mentioned on our other or previous calls, a lot of folks have been focused on janitorial, the virus, making sure you're clean, all very important things. Of course, the legal aspects and everything else. But this is not a time to forget about security. As I've mentioned before, while during difficult times like this and when it affects people's economic situation, security and issues tend to be on the forefront of people's minds. So now more than ever is a good time for you to take an assessment of where your property is for security.
Okay, Dino, thank you. We've got a IT question for Peter. Can members outside of my organization use Microsoft Teams?
Absolutely. So Microsoft Teams is actually free, as well as Skype, where Skype can now communicate with anyone that's running on Microsoft Teams. So as an example, in our organization, our corporate standard is Microsoft Teams, where we could do our chatting, we can do our calls, audio or video. But imagine if you have 1,000 employees out there that all have Skype on their mobile phones or even on their desktop. They can actually reach out to our teams internally and communicate. But there's a couple of things. We have to activate that in the sense of allowing Skype calls to come in. When somebody's trying to attempt to chat, the person on the team side would have to accept the chat, and then that person becomes a guest in our Teams environment. So absolutely, yes. And plus, at the end, because Microsoft went out of the way to make Microsoft Teams free, and it's a lot more robust than Skype, that would be the suggestion I would make, especially if it runs on iOS and Android and desktop as well. So, and it's the same company. They're all, both Skype is Microsoft and Teams is Microsoft. So, yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Peter, thank you. Question for Jeff. What disinfectant products can harm fitness equipment?
Awesome. Great question. So with, the easiest way to explain it is you wouldn't take a bottle of 409 and throw it on your computer, right? So a lot of disinfectants can be very corrosive, and you've got sensitive, computers and electronic systems in the cardio equipment. And also some of the finishes that are on the strength machines, even though it is power coated, chlorine bleaches, ammonia type disinfectants, really strong corrosive quats can harm it. So there's specific products and people you actually want to hire to disinfect and clean the fitness equipment. I've had maintenance people, not to tell a horror story, but you can't just take a mop and throw it on the treadmill belt and run it and think you've cleaned it. That's really not good for the equipment. So make sure you're not putting anything on the product that can harm it. Stuff that kind of, can evaporate and the corrosive fumes can kind of get into electronics. You don't want to end up with a $5,000 treadmill dead on arrival after a cleaning crew or something like that. So you can damage them with the wrong disinfectants or cleaning materials.
Okay, Jeff, thank you. We've got a question for Martin. If you have a project to replace the dry fire sprinkler piping in a residential parking garage located below residential units, which has received their required building department permits. Do you believe this project would be able to go ahead at this time?
Assuming that this was in New Jersey and it was a repair or that was necessary due to some failure or issue that you were having with the dry fire sprinkler piping, yes, absolutely. That's a life safety issue. You want to go ahead and get that done. What I would do, though, is let the building department know that you view it as essential construction under Governor Murphy's order and you tend to move forward. I don't see them objecting to it, but I think it's always best to be proactive in that regard and involve them. But I'd like to get Ray's thought on that as well, how he would handle it and recommend it.
Yeah, as far as the importance of that system, definitely. Usually it's, there's a reason why you're replacing it. It's impaired, it's damaged, it's not working properly. So for safety reasons, I think we would go forward with that, especially if the permits are all done, which is a lot of people are having problems getting permits right now. But if this is already set in stone and it's ready to go, we would have no problem doing it. I think we are deemed essential, and that project, especially for a dry sprinkler in a garage unit, would be ready to go.
Okay, good. Another question for Jeff. Any resources, recommendations to maintain fitness at home for those of us gaining the 19 of COVID?
Yes. Great question, Ben. I think you're referring to 19 lb in pounds, right? We're probably all sitting on Zoom meetings where we could be standing up instead of sitting. That's a good tactic. There's tons of apps that are out there for wellness and fitness. Peloton just came out with a new interactive TV resource. I will tell you from a physiology background, 85% of the battle really is what's in your refrigerator. So maybe some sort of plan or tactic to, you got to put a stamp on the fridge every time you open that door to limit it. But, controlling what your intake is, obviously against, what you're burning off is the plan, and have some control, right? The fridge is always there and it's always ready to feed you. So that would be my first line of defense, and then find some routines and equipment that you can do at home.
And Jeff, you had given some ideas last week on some things they could log into for some virtual things they could do for, I guess, mental.
Yeah, sure. If I can pitch what we're doing.
Why not?
We have a free app that we've been providing to a lot of our clients and residents, and I've aligned with this app specifically because it's tapping more into the wellness side of it and the mental aspect of our well-being versus there's a bazillion trainers out there on Instagram and all these other fitness programs, which is great. It's providing more access to this, but the more important thing, and where we're seeing an increase of interest, 80% of our population does not have a gym membership, right? And what are we doing for those people as they're stuck in their house to keep their head straight, right? So we've gotten behind an app. It's called 3 Sages. And if you use the promo code Heartline, it's free for 60 days. But this app really focuses on sips of wellness. It does have exercise, quick fixes in it, yoga, but there's breath work, there's music, there's meditation, a lot of things that will work for people outside of let's go do CrossFit in my garage or going for a run. So just trying to be a little bit different with what we're aligning behind there and really providing some help and a tool for more of the population than just our fitness people and, like me, CrossFitter guy.
Great. Thank you. I just wanted to jump in real quick here. So we have a few more questions in our Q&A right now. So if you're going to ask, we're getting close to the bottom of the hour here. If you're going to put in any other questions, please do so now. We will get to all the questions that are in the Q&A at this time. Feel free to add more. So Nick, if we can continue with the rest in the queue.
Sure. Let's see. I've got a question for Ray. Can we make precise appointment times with our fire protection companies to minimize the amount of employee and tenant contact and duration time of the appointment?
I think that's a great question. Yes. Once again, that goes with communication. A lot of the phone calls we're going to have with our clients, hey, can we show up this day? Yes or no. It's going to be, when are we showing up? The precise time would really help to minimize those risks of us being there for longer or exposing the wrong people. So definitely the conversation that you're going to have when you're scheduling or when we're calling you to schedule is going to be much longer, and it should include things like that to make it more accurate. The accuracy would be important so we could have a game plan. Every appointment should really have a game plan at this point, in my mind. I think that's the safest thing to do and really help. So yeah, we can do that, make it more of a precise appointment for you, time-wise, everything, explanation, all that. So.
Okay. Thank you, Ray. Question for Martin. Are business owners required by law to pay employees for their time off if they contract COVID-19?
So there's a couple of avenues available to people who are employed and contract the virus, right? Prior to the Families First Coronavirus Response Act ever even being adopted, you had general FMLA leave that would employees could take. That does not include being paid during that time. The government during this process adopted the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and some employees may be able to get some pay during that time if they have coronavirus, though the rate of pay varies depending on the circumstances, could vary state to state. So you got to check with your Department of Labor, look at the government, the National Government Department of Labor, and then the one in your state as well to get the exact details. Important to know, an employer cannot fire you because of the virus. That does not mean they can't fire you for some other legitimate reason. Of course, if I'm counseling any employer, I'm going to tell them, look, man, yes, you're firing them because you're having financial issues, all these other things, but you're going to end up in a suit at some point if you fire them while they have the virus. Again, but it doesn't mean an employer can't let somebody go while they have the virus. They would have to document that they have a good reason to do so, though.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, good. I guess that does it with our questions. Dino, did you want to wrap?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And I want to thank again all of our panelists. Ray will continue to be with us now going forward. So if you do have questions regarding fire safety, we will always have him on our panel. So thank you, Ray, and thank you to all the panelists for joining. Next week, we're going to feature American Pool. I'm really looking forward to this. There have been changes, and I'm certainly not going to steal Ben's thunder, but there are changes happening every day around the pools and the industry, especially during COVID-19. So really looking forward. You don't want to miss Ben next week. Absolutely invite folks who can benefit from this. I mentioned we'll be joining forces with some other folks that are doing similar type things every week that we are, and they want to come on board and be a part of our solution for you. Please remember to give us your comments, and please remember to tell us what you'd like to see going forward. This is all about you, the participants, and we'll keep doing this as long as you want to receive it. So we're going to leave our screen up for a little while, like we have been doing at the end of every presentation. Our panelists are going to fade to black. We're going to go away. Feel free, if you want to leave any more questions while we're gone, we'll be sure to get the answers to you. Until next week, stay safe. Thank you so much for participating, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, everyone.